Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Oh, there I go. Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me and you can see me. Hi, Ophelia. Hi, Jeff. I'm glad you can make it. Hi, Axel. Awesome. This is so great. Loud and clear. Awesome. So if I'm kind of looking off, it's because I have like two screens set up here. So I'll try to focus straight at you guys. So I'm not, it's like, I can't see the chat. So I have the chat on another screen. So that's why I'm kind of like looking all over the place here. Hey, Lisa, I'm so glad you can make it. Happy that you're here as well. Hey, Robin, have my tea. I met up with Robin like right before this, so a long time no see, exactly. All right, guys, so I just want to thank you so much for logging into Hustling with Intention. I'm Siobhan John, founder of Secrets of a Side Hustler, and I am so excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, planning, but also hustling, but with intention. So we're going to talk a little bit about like what that actually means. And I'm going to share tonight a couple of tips for you guys to focus on your 2016 planning. So as we know, it's November. I think it's almost mid-November. And right about now is a really good time to start thinking about like what your goals are for 2016. At least I know that I'm thinking about that. Is anyone else thinking about planning right now? Just put it in the chat if you're thinking about your planning. But I know for myself, that's something that I usually start around the November timeframe. And today I thought it'd be really awesome to have a masterclass, since we haven't had one in a while, and focus on planning. Yes. Ophelia says yes, sure. So also, you guys, let me know where you guys are joining us from. I see a few of you guys from the Side Hustle chat. Woot, woot. So let me know where you guys are tuning in from, and share your side hustle with all of us as well. More like thinking about it than actual planning, Axel. That's funny. No, well, today you're at the right place, because we're actually going to talk about not just thinking about it, but the actual starting of the planning. So with that, I'm going to see if I can start sharing. So I'm not going to be on the entire time. I just wanted to kind of show you that there's a real person behind the slides. But we'll jump right in, because I want to respect your guys' time. I have a few things to cover, and I think it'll probably be about an hour. And I'll leave some time for questions as well. So let's just jump right in then. So I'm going to try to share here and hope that this thing does not break on me. What's on here? Let's just give this a go. Oh, 1 second. We need to open the document. Just give me 1 second, guys. Right. So while that is loading, I see we have Jeff joining us from Kansas. We have Robin from Toronto. All right, let's open this up and let's try screen share part 2. Aha, there we go. So once I share this, guys, let me know if you can see it. All right, I have some magenta slides in front of me right now. Can you guys see the slides? Yay or nay? It's there. I love that. It works. I can use the internet. Amazing. All right, good. Okay, so let's jump right in. So today we're talking about hustling with intention, how to create goals and a 2016 plan that inspires you to take action. All right, so our agenda today. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is hustling with intention. So it's not just a catchy title that I came up with. It's actually a philosophy of what I use to do my planning process. And hopefully it will be of use to you guys as well as you're creating your goals and your plans, but also just how you approach working within your side hustle in general. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like what does it mean to hustle with intention and how you can apply that formula to your 2016 planning process. Before we jump into actual planning, I want to talk a little about some common pitfalls or planning mistakes to avoid. Then we'll jump into the actual methodology that I use for planning. So there's 7 secrets of how to hustle with intention, and there's a couple of different steps that you can use in creating your plan. And then how you can actually steal from your full-time job, and not steal property, but stealing strategies. So there's a lot of lessons and learnings that we can take from our full-time roles that can actually help us with our become better entrepreneurs, as well as to help us become better planners. So I'm going to share a couple of different strategies that you probably are even just using right now and just not even knowing, but that it will definitely help you as you're growing and building your business. And we'll leave some space for Q&A as well. Okay, and also if you guys didn't notice at the bottom of this, actually I'll get to that in a second, but you might have seen a pink button, and I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. All right, so because I love community and hashtags, you'll see a couple hashtags peppered into this presentation. I love for you guys to, if you're enjoying what you're learning, or also just to stay connected with each other, to share our hashtag tonight is hustle with intention. So a lot of you guys, you already know about Side Hustle Chat, so I don't need to share the deal. But one of the main things and what I love about Side Hustle Chat is that every week I get to connect with some amazing folks, and that what's great about it is some of the folks who come to the chat, they just stay connected and they keep chatting, you know, on days that's not Tuesday. So that's really awesome. And that's what I love about this community. So I'm hoping that with Hustle with Intention, if there's a way for you guys to stay connected and also just to share what you learn. So this is the official hashtag for this evening. Feel free to share if there's anything that resonates with you, and also for you guys to stay connected using that. All right. And also there is a workbook. So as I mentioned, this is not just some theory. I also wanted to give you guys a workbook that you can take to apply some of the things that we learned today. So you can download that workbook on this page. There is a button called download your workbook. Should open in a brand new screen, so you won't have to refresh or anything like that. And it'll open up to a Dropbox page that will give you a PDF of some of the prompts and questions and resources that we talk about today. All right, so I'm Shimon, and I'm the founder of Secrets of a Side Hustler, and I'm also a side hustler too. So I guess by day, I am a communication strategist and a project manager. And that's why I'm a bit of a planning nerd, and why I wanted to do this particular workshop right now is because I love planning things and I love helping folks with their plans as well. So that's a little bit of a couple fun facts about myself. And for folks who aren't familiar with the Secrets of a Side Hustler community, I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about kind of what our story is and why we're here and why we're passionate about helping you guys with taking the passion that you have, that you're working on the side, and really why to help you guys kind of propel it forward. So Secrets of a Side Hustler actually started as an event series, and it was just started as an idea that I had back in 2013 in November, where I was just seeking an outlet to talk about the ups and downs of side hustling. I actually was just feeling very overwhelmed at one of my roles at the time. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I really wish that I could just share like how this hustling actually feels sometimes. So I called up, you know, 4 of my friends, really good friends, and said, hey, like, I have this idea. Like, would you be willing to, you know, share your experience as well? And that's where our first event started. So it was started with about maybe 40 people in the room. We did it at Ryerson University. And from there, I realized that there was a really great opportunity to have a broader conversation. And that's where we expanded to the Secrets of a Side Hustler community in September of 2014. So from there, this is where we actually launched as a particular brand, a community, and not just as an event series, but really as a way to connect and unite side hustlers, but to sort of empower you guys to, you know that you have the ability to pursue what you're passionate about, but also to arm you with the confidence and clarity to do so. So just doing a quick pause, just want to make sure everyone got the notebook. I just kind of saw the chat. There was a little bit of confusion there. I think we're good now. Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So also in 2014 is when we debuted our side hustle chat, which is something that is near and dear to me, is one of my favorite parts of this community. A lot of you guys are here tonight, which is super awesome. And then 2015 was just, I kind of look at this as our going pro year. So this is when we started to do a lot more meetup events, workshops, having mentorship and accountability programs. We had our first side hustle week back in September. Another, again, idea of like, hey, like, I would love to just, you know, create something for side hustlers and really bring us together and sort of honor that desire that I have to bring people together and create a sense of community. And hint, I'll talk a little bit more about why those desires kind of factor into your planning process. And we had our first side hustle week in September. 2016, looking to do a lot more. So stay tuned for that. A lot more of events, a lot more things that are focused on being intentional though. So I'll talk a little bit more about how you can kind of create your own timeline and story and planning with intention to be able to achieve the goals that you have for your business. Okay, so what does it mean to hustle with intention? So as I mentioned before, it's not just a catchy tagline. I kind of look at it from a deeper perspective. And for me, it's really about giving yourself permission to not do it all. So looking at planning holistically, honoring your values, your desires, and your wellness. So taking those things actually into account into your planning process. And it's really about taking the time to being very intentional about understanding and identifying what you will do and what you won't do. So it's instead of trying to do all of the things, it's trying to choose to only do specific things. So I think when we think of the word of hustling, we think of, you know, creating opportunities, you know, being a go-getter, getting things done, and that's all true. However, I think it's very powerful when you can hustle with intention in the sense that you are not just focusing on trying to do everything. You're very clear about what your priorities are. You have a good understanding of like what your vision is, and you only focus on things that are in alignment of that. So I think when you have that ability to do so, it really opens up an opportunity for you to really take focused action with respect to your goals. So what does that look like? So I've kind of taken hustling with intention, and you can kind of break it down to a formula. And how I like to look at it as it's your desires plus your vision minus your obstacles plus action. And that's what equals hustling with intention. So I'm going to say that again. So it's your desires, which are what are the things that you want to feel? What do you want? Your vision is like the grand plan, the big dream. What are the things that you want to accomplish? Removing your obstacles. So those are the things that are standing in your way of actually getting your goals or achieving your goals. Obviously, you need to take action, and that is what hustling with intention is. So I'm actually going to explain a little bit more about what each of these different things mean and how it can help you with creating your plan. Okay, let me just double check. I don't think I skipped something. Oh, okay. All right. So if we look at hustling with intention in practice, this is what it might look like. So if we choose to hustle with intention, it could look like taking the time to implement what you learn in a course before buying a new one. It could be proactively planning restorative time in your day, your week, or your month, focusing on specific content strategies versus trying to do everything, and taking inspired action based on your values and your desires and your vision. So that's what it could look like in practice. So in your workbook as well, I've also put some space for you to even think about, like, when you think about what hustling with intention means, now that we know the definition, you can jot down, like, what do you think that would look like for you in your own life? And these are just a couple of examples. So I see hustling with intention as a side hustler's secret weapon. And the reason why is, first off, our time is very limited. So as you know, we have full-time jobs, and a lot of our day is spent at our full-time work. So we're spending maybe 8 to 10 hours plus our commuting time. There's not much time to actually focus on our business. So the time that we do have, it needs to be very focused and very intentional about where you're focusing your energy. So that's why it becomes very important to have a very clear plan and vision and just values that you have of knowing of what you want to accomplish. And it also, and having that focus will help you reach your goals faster. So I think one of the things that it's so easy as side hustlers to try to do so many different things, and it's very overwhelming. I think business in general, there's lots of different things that we want to learn, but it's really important to kind of take that time to do that plan, to figure out, like, what is it that I really truly want to accomplish? Why do I want to accomplish it? And then taking those times to identify the clear steps of what are the things that can give me the biggest impact in the time that I have allotted for myself. So it's really about, like, you know, you have your 9 to 5, but like really taking that time to plan what your 5 to 9 time looks like. All right, so before I talk about how do you actually start planning, I want to talk about a little bit of the 4 common planning mistakes. So these are a couple of things that I've even made some of these mistakes before, but I think once you guys see them, you let me know if they're also a little bit common to you as well. So the first mistake is being on team too much. So otherwise, that is trying to cram too much in your plan or having too many goals. So one thing that I like to remind myself is that you remember that you can do anything, but you can't try to do everything at the same time. So I think sometimes when we're starting our planning process, we get really excited and we want to do so many different things, or the year will start and we'll see other people doing different stuff and we'll be like, oh, let's just layer on a lot of different things. And I think once that happens is that it allows and invites the opportunity for us to be distracted. So that's a common mistake that it happens to the best of us, is that we try to put on too many different things and actually overpack our plan. And I think the sign of a really good plan is that it leaves a little bit of room for flexibility. Because even if you have like a set of goals, like things happen. Sometimes you have to pivot. Maybe you have a goal to maybe write a book or to create a course or to do something, and maybe something might happen that you might have to delay that. But if you're sort of packing your goals or packing your plan that it has so many different things that it doesn't leave any room for you to have any room to pivot, that's when it leaves a lot of opportunity or a highly likelihood for you to have feel burnt out, or to feel that your work that you're doing no longer is actually something that you feel passionate about. It just feels like another job. So you want to ensure that when you're planning or when you're just taking on any project in general, that we already have a job as being a side hustler. You don't want your business to now also feel like another job as well. So that's planning mistake number 1. Number 2 is not reviewing your plan regularly. So I think sometimes what ends up happening is that we'll create this detailed plan. We put in all the work, we spend our time in November, December, investing in all the effort to make it happen. And then it just kind of sits in a binder somewhere, and then you don't look at it again. So it's really important to kind of create systems for yourself to keep your inspiration close. So you could create a goal card. I know Amber McHugh talks a little bit about that. Asana is like an actual tool that you can enter in the projects that you're working on, the goals that you're working on. And it's really great as a collaboration tool if you have other people that you are working with, where you can share the projects that you're doing, and it can send you reminders, syncs to your calendar. Another way that you can create a way to review your plan is creating a VSCM. So I won't talk about what this is right now because there is a section and a slide that talks about it in more detail, but it stands for Vision, Strategy, Execution, and Metrics Statement. And basically it's like a plan on a page. So it shares like what your goals are for the entire year, what is the strategy and your execution plan to make it happen. So I think basically what I'm trying to get with this is that it's important to kind of check in with what you're regularly trying to accomplish. So when you think about when you're putting together your, like, for instance, your to-do list every week, like, is that based on the goals and the priorities that you have for the year, or is it just kind of like things that are just on the fly? So that's kind of a way that you can figure out is like a common planning mistake is that when you feel like you constantly have everything feels like a priority, take a step back and check back like, hey, do I not, like, what is my plan, mentioning that I should be focusing on right now? Mistake number 3. So opposite to mistake number 1, where you're planning too much, number 3 is that it's actually too little or it's too generic. So a question I like to ask myself is that, do you have a plan or do you have a wish list? So as a project manager, one of the things that is really important as having a plan is to have like timelines or, have end dates. Like, so the traditional definition of like a project is that it has a start and an end date. And if it doesn't have an end date, then it's probably not a project. It's just kind of like something that's ongoing. And, that's one of the things that you just have like these ongoing and ongoing and ongoing projects. But from a planning perspective, like, you should try to see, like, have you identified timelines or at least targets of when you want to accomplish things? And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the execution of or taking action on your plan. But like, what are the particular timelines when you want to have things happen? So if you want to launch a course next year, do you have an idea of like when that course is going to launch? Reason being is that you have to take into consideration things like, building your audience or priming them to get them ready, putting together the content, things like the marketing that needs to go into it. So you kind of have to have an idea of like what you're working towards so you can work backwards to identify like what are the steps that you have to take and that you can take that focused action on those steps. So while you don't want to be too rigid and have too many things or too many goals, you also don't want to be too vague where it leaves too much room for interpretation of what needs to happen. And mistake number 4, which I think is one of the ones that we often overlook, but is one of the most important things that we should not do. And it's not prioritizing yourself. So in order for any of your goals to happen, it requires you to make them happen. So when you put together your goals, your plans, your aspirations for the year, have you thought about like what restorative time that you're going to give back to yourself? Are you using your vacation time? Are you making sure that you're making time for sleep? So that's really important when you're putting together your plan. I think a lot of times we get so focused on getting things done and we put ourselves on the back burner of that. But you have to remember that you are your biggest asset in your business. You're the one that's making all of this happen. And you're also doing it for a purpose as well. And you can't ignore yourself as you're making those things, as you're working on your goals. So I would say that you definitely have to make sure that you can take care of yourself so you can take care of business. And business, not just your own side hustle, but just business in general, just making things happen and the things that are important to you in your life. So related to this actual mistake number 4, like, I love this, that I saw this from Shalene Johnson. So she posted this a couple weeks ago, and she had mentioned that any entrepreneur without a fitness plan has an incomplete business plan. And I completely agree with her. And a fitness plan doesn't have to be like, totally like you're training for the Olympics or anything like that. I would probably extend it to like having a wellness plan for yourself. But it really goes to the point of it's so important to make sure that your wellness is really is a big part of your business and a big part of your planning process. And it's really how it goes hand in hand about being intentional about the type of action that you're taking. And it's not just the business action that you're doing, but it's the action that you're taking with respect to taking care of yourself. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about like how do you now take, you know, putting together a 2016 plan using the formula of desires, your vision, taking away your obstacles, and adding your action. So let's talk a little bit about that. And you also have your workbooks that will give you a little bit more information. So step number 1 is to reflect and recap your current year. So the first step is not jumping into, okay, what do I want to accomplish? Let me start working on like what goals I want to do. It's actually celebrating and closing down the previous year. So we're in 2015 right now, and like this is a good time to start thinking about like what happened this year. What are you proud of? What did you learn? What did you stop doing? What do you want to stop doing? What do you want to let go of? How do you feel about this year? What are you grateful for? So in your workbook, I actually have, I think, about 3 different pages of prompts that you can use to actually do your own self-reflection. And I think the reason why this is so important is that it's really good to just kind of take a quick inventory about how things went. How did you actually feel about this year? Did everything go well? If it did, that's great. Or what are the habits and routines that you can take into the next year? But if things didn't go so great, like this is a good opportunity to sort of step back and reevaluate and say, you know, I really didn't like, you know, maybe what I had to, the amount of work or time that I had to spend hustling on something, or I spent way too much time working on a project and not enough time on my self-care. You know, this is a good time to kind of identify like what those gaps are. So the first step is to really stop and take a step back and just do that self-reflection. So there's a few questions for you guys in your workbooks that I encourage you to take a look at after the call, just to kind of get you to think about like what are some of the opportunities. And it's a great practice as well to sort of celebrate the great things that you've done this year, because even if you haven't accomplished every single goal that you might have set for yourself at the beginning of the year, I'm sure you've learned so many different things and accomplished a lot of different things more than you give yourself credit for. So this is a very, like, don't skip this step. I know it's a step that folks are like, oh, I don't need to do this, but it's actually a great way to sort of get you inspired and motivated to really conquer the next upcoming year. So that would be step number 1, is to really reflect, recap your current year, and really just take a time to pause and celebrate it. So I shared a couple of questions in your workbook, but I also wanted to pause and let you know that there's some other resources to help you reflect that I've used in the past, and that I've known that they have some really great ways for you to reflect and to do that kind of deep dive process. So here are a couple of great sources of different workbooks, and I've also included the investment of how much they are. Some are free and some are, I think, about $27 or so. So it's actually not really that much, but I'll talk a little about each and like what you can kind of gain from them. So there's one called Susanna Conway's Unraveling the Year Ahead. And basically this is a free workbook that goes into a lot of detail with a lot of prompts about like how your year went. Everything from sharing your gratitude, sharing what worked, what didn't work. And she has kind of a little bit of a spiritual undertone. So it talks a little bit about sort of a little bit of like some spiritual concepts in terms of like more so about how you felt about the year. But it's a really great book in terms of getting you to think about like what are the things that you really want to focus on for the upcoming year. So that book actually comes out around, it'll probably come out late in November but early December, and it's on SusannaConway.com. The next one is Leonie Dawson. So she actually has 2 different types of planners, and one is called The Amazing Life, and another one is called The Amazing Biz Planner, or you can get them both together. And it starts at about like $9 going up to about $25, I believe. But basically it's more so very colorful, very art sort of focused, but it's really focused again on getting you to sort of ask questions to reflect about how your year went and giving you sort of the tools to sort of think about what you can do for next year. So that's another workbook. And another one is Amber McHugh, which I love. She is also a former side hustler. We've interviewed her on our website a few months ago. Super awesome. And she has a book called The Fresh Start Planning Workbook. And basically what I love about Amber is that we kind of share a similar methodology about really focusing in on not just the goals, but the numbers behind those goals as well too. So really talking about like what your numbers are, how to kind of make sure that your numbers stay at the forefront, but to take some time. What she has at the beginning of her book is some notes about how to kind of get ready and primed for the year. So those are a couple of things to help you with step one if you're interested, if you want to go a little bit deeper than what's in the webinar workbook that I gave you guys. I've like some different resources that you can feel free to check out. So step number 2 is identifying your desire. So I see Elsie's joining us and she's mentioning Leonie and it's a woo-woo, and I guess desire map can kind of fall in the same category of being a little woo-woo, but I think it's really important as well, and it's kind of transformed the way that I sort of approach goal setting and just kind of like my hustle in general, and I'll give it an example. So the Desire Map is a book that was created by Danielle Laporte, and it really focuses on and it's based on the premise of creating goals based on your feelings. So her belief and her hypothesis is that behind every goal is a feeling that you're seeking. So for instance, like for myself, when I create things like side chat or side feeling behind that is not like I did there. No, the feeling is I love the feeling of community and communion. It's really like kind of challenging way to sort of go deeper behind the desire that you have to accomplish something. So instead of sort of creating a laundry list of different goals, like think about the goals that you might even have for yourself right now. Like how do you feel when you think about those goals, and like what are the things that you want to feel when you accomplish those goals? Because essentially it's like, is it a sense of confidence? Is it a sense of accolade? Is it a sense of being able to bring people together? I just see Robin says, I went from accomplishing 50% of my goals to 90% of this year after doing the Desire Map. Awesome. So it's definitely a really interesting way of looking at the things that you're doing. And really why I included it with hustling with this whole hustling with intention formula is that it's the ultimate way of being very intentional. It's really about checking in and putting yourself first in terms of making sure that you're working on things that are actually important to you. Because it is so easy to get swept up in what so many people are doing and thinking that you see a formula that works for somebody and you think, hey, should I be doing that now? You know, and when you actually step back and look at your actual true desires and your true values of what you really want, you might be surprised yourself and realize that that's actually not the case. So it's really, even if you don't sort of lead with it and kind of use it as your full goal setting process, I really would encourage you guys to just kind of give a thought to like, what is it that you actually really, desire and feel and want to feel in your life? And take a step back and see, like, are the activities that you're doing now actually lining up with that? And if they're not, what are the things that you can do to ensure that they are? So I'll give an example on the next slide of how I've used having my core desired feelings as a way to hustle with intention. So 3 of my core desired feelings are feeling connected, feeling communion, and feeling nourished. So connected and communion are kind of similar. Connected being obviously feeling connected to other folks, to other people, bringing people together. Communion is really about, the definition of that is kind of sharing or exchanging thoughts and feelings, and especially when that exchange is on a mental or spiritual level. So In other words, communion to me is like really not only just bringing people together, but having like great and meaningful conversations. So that's why like side hustle chat for me is like the ultimate of just like all in my feelings of, of just like loving that exchange of seeing so many people having great, meaningful conversations and connecting with one another. And feeling nourished is not just nourished in the sense of just like eating. When you think of what the definition of nourished means, it's kind of like feeling satiated or feeling full or feeling content. And for me, the feeling of nourishment shows up in the goals or in my planning process is that I like to create things or to ensure that I kind of provide that feeling to people of feeling that when they encounter something that I do or create, that they leave feeling that it was a useful experience, or that they left feeling full, or that it was a good experience. So that's how I've kind of translated that word nourished into the work that I do. So this is just kind of an interesting or a different way of kind of looking at how something as simple as your feelings and your desires can actually help guide the projects and the intention and focus that you put into your work. So I've given kind of examples below of the things that honor those desires. Side hustle chat, creating live experiences. So live experiences for me are like my live events. Workshop, side hustle week, creating like regular self-care audits. So just by identifying the feelings that I want, I ensure that anything that I'm creating is in alignment with those different feelings. And if they're not, I have to question like, okay, is this something that I should really be focusing on? Is there something that's missing? So this is just a way to kind of put the desire map into practice. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful in terms of explaining how that's used. So in terms of resources, so the ultimate resource about how to identify your desires would be Danielle Laporte's Desire Map. If you don't have the book, you can actually see a lot of different resources for free on her website. She has like some audios. I was a member of her book club, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions or just want to get some more info about that. But that is just a good resource in terms of if you want to learn more about it. Step number 3. So part of the formula, we talked about first desires, then we have to add in our vision. So ask yourself this, imagine it's December 31st, 2016. What are you celebrating? What have you accomplished? So with your vision is like, what is it that you're working towards? Like, what is the grand vision that you have for your business, but also what is the vision that you have for your year? So one way to start with this is that there's lots of different ways. Like some folks like to create a vision board. I've done that in the past, but I think it'd be something that I actually am going to do something, another one again this year. And we're actually going to have a vision board party, hint, hint, on December 1st with Side Hustle Chat. So save the date for that. But another way is like, I also like to create a vision statement. And in order to get to that statement, I actually have to get a sense of like, what do I want to accomplish? So what I like to do with step number 3 is to first figure out what you want to do is for the year is begin with doing a brain dump of everything that you want to accomplish. So the one thing about planning is that at the start of the year, we want to do everything. We want to do all the things. We want to just kind of like, I want to write I want to do a course. I want to do all these events. The beginning of last year, or like late last year this time, 2014, and Elsie can attest to this, Side Hustle Week, which we just hosted, and it had, I think, ended up having 4 live events. When I first conceived the idea, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do 7 events and 2 online. Actually, 7 events, and I was going to do one in like a different city, as well too. So obviously that did not happen after doing a little bit of a really pared down process. But start with just kind of putting out everything, because there's so much information that is probably in our head right now. And you want to just kind of get it all out. Even if you don't use and do everything, because you won't. You will not do everything on this list. It will give you an idea of like some of the ideas that you may want to bank and use for maybe another year or another time. So start off like to create, what are the things that you want to accomplish? I see Elsie laughing at me. Yes, exactly. So start with that, and then I will talk about the next step of what you can do with that. So once you've kind of done your full brain dump of everything, you kind of have to take that and narrow it down. So you're not going to leave it that way. You just wanted to kind of get all of the ideas of what things look like. But number 4 is to start identifying the priorities. And that's where you're going to take that big group of things. And this is what I did, is like I looked at 7 days and realized that's not going to happen, but it was still part of the bigger vision, and really narrow it down to the actual essentials. And here's how you're going to do that. So you have your, in step 3, your big list of all the things you want to do. The next thing you're going to do is like, ask yourself, what do I want to go big on? And meaning, what are the things that I really want to make happen? What is the thing that I'm willing to make a trade-off to make happen? Because remember what we said at the beginning, like you might think that you can do everything, but you can't do everything at the same time. So there are going to be some things that you might have to let go and might have to trade off in order to make those things happen. What are those things that you know, knowing that you're willing to make that happen, that you've outlined on your list? Are any of the things on your list that you've identified in your big brain dump time sensitive? So for me, Side Hustle Week had to happen in September because that was my anniversary of Secrets of a Side Hustler. So do you have projects or things that have to happen at a certain date? And also, does the project align to your and honor your desires? So we talked about, we did that process of like, what are your desired feelings? What are your values? Are you picking things as your priorities in alignment to that? So once you use the above questions, use those things to narrow your vision brainstorming to 3 to 5 priorities. So I've seen like lots of different variations about, should we have 3 priorities, 1 priority? Some people do 5. I say like do between 3 to 5. Like myself, I like to maybe keep it between 3 of what are the things I'm going to focus on. But I would say probably don't go past 5, because like after that, it becomes a little bit hard to sort of track. All right. Okay, so step number 5, identifying your obstacles. So this is something that I really got very familiar with this year, because after, spending the time making the plans, putting in the place of like the priorities, the timelines, you cross all the I's and dot all the T's and say, hey, this is going to be great. But then, there's some things that kind of creep up. We have our strengths, but we also have our saboteurs. And those are the things that kind of get in the way, and the constraints that pop up as we're trying to put our goals together and make them happen. So it's very important at the onset to kind of identify what those triggers are. What are those constraints that are coming up? And here are a couple of examples of different barriers and obstacles that might be things that you might want to be aware of. So how do you identify your own personal obstacles? You ask yourself, what is getting in the way of achieving what I want? So I've given a couple of examples. These are not all of them, but a couple of examples of obstacles would be over-consuming information. Anybody here on the chat have a problem with overconsumption or is a knowledge junkie like myself? Click yes or let me know. Perfection or procrastination. Those are obstacles. So when you start working on stuff, you're constantly fiddling with things. You don't want to launch it because it's not right. What ends up happening, you keep pushing things back. Or another example, compare and despair. You take a look at whatever the people are doing, and it sort of impacts the work that you're doing. You start feeling demotivated. You don't take any action at all. So these are obstacles, and it's not to say that they're bad. I mean, it happens to all of us, but you have to kind of get a sense of, hit them. Don't let them become your blind spots. Bring them into the light. And identify and acknowledge what they are so that you can deal with them. So how do you deal with them? Is first you have to acknowledge that they're there, and that you have to make a plan of how you will address or eliminate them. So using the examples on the previous slide is, if I had overconsumption, I had perfection and procrastination, and compare and despair. So if you struggle with overconsumption or overconsuming information, one of the things that you can do to help address that obstacle, so if you know that you're prone to loving to, take a lot of information in, I am one of these people. I'll fully say, like, I love, one of my strengths is, like, I am a knowledge person. I did the Strengths Finder test, but the bad side of that is that you like to consume a lot of info. So one of the things that it's important to do is schedule implementation time into your schedule. So it could be something that you do every day, it could be something that you do every week. Another thing that you can do is take a course break. So I actually had this year, for the first few months of the year, I was on a course detox. So I was not taking any new courses at all. I was like, the PayPal account was closed. No new stuff. It was only focused on making things happen. And it's important to kind of know and do that, because there's no shortage, guys, of things, as it is. Like, there's so many things to learn. Like, every day I'm like, I want to learn this and this and this. But at some point you got to make sure that you are, learning, doing, learning, doing, learning, doing. So that's one way to kind of address that obstacle. So if you know that's something that you struggle with, address it and figure out a plan of, like, how you're going to tackle it head on before it becomes a problem when it starts derailing your goals. Second one, example, is perfection and procrastination. So if you struggle with, constantly waiting to make things perfect, you might have something that you've been working on for a very long time. And you're kind of like, well, I can't launch it yet because the sales page isn't nice yet, or the colors doesn't work, or I don't have a graphic designer to do, all these little things that are stepping in the way to get things happen. Perfect way to kind of conquer that, or at least to help you move through it: get an accountability partner, get a business bestie, regularly actively share your goals, make yourself accountable. Make that forced accountability of, like, sharing what you're going to do. So for instance, if you have a blog and you want to regularly post, let's say once a week, share with your audience, I'm going to post once a week. Share with an accountability partner, or even, like, set up some systems that you can be able to have somebody help you with getting those posts done. So those are some of the things that you want to do in terms of addressing kind of your obstacle if you have a procrastination and perfection issue. Second, or lastly, compare and despair. So if you struggle with comparison, or know that you're prone to sometimes get a little bit distracted by what other people are doing, some of the things that you could potentially is unroll.me. So that is something that you can actually use to unsubscribe from different providers. Another thing that you can use that's similar is called SaneBox. And what it does is actually takes specific emails and puts it into a different folder completely. And it can give you, like, a digest of, like, all the things that it's sort of removed out of your inbox and kind of put into this other inbox that you don't have to look at right away. So it has a way of being able to identify what's important versus what's not important. Another thing that you could do that I've also done is that you just set up a different email address for your subscriptions. So you keep your regular email address for your business, for things that are important, emails that you want to receive, and then just kind of have a fun email address that is all for your research, your courses, your, the things that you just want to use to sign up for things that don't clog up your own inbox. So that's something that you can do as well. and celebrate your weekly wins. So when we're caught in that cycle of comparing ourselves to other people, it is all you think about is, okay, so-and-so just made this 5-figure launch in 2 days and I'm not doing that. And you start completely forgetting about all the things that you actually are doing. So what I would say to that is get in the regular practice of celebrating things that you've done every week, or even just setting up a folder of like, and I like to call mine kind of like a love file or a love folder, where if people send me positive comments or just kind of things that have gone well, I sort of file that away. So on the days where I'm feeling a little bit sort of out of it or just not really kind of sure about what I'm doing, is like I can kind of go back and celebrate some of the things that I actually am doing really well. Because I think it's important to make sure that you sort of celebrate what you're doing and make sure that you're giving yourself the credit that you're making things happen. So those are a couple of ways that you should address your obstacles. So very important step of hustling with intention is that it's not about just how much stuff you do. It's really about taking some stuff out and really identifying those blind spots that usually kind of creep up from time to time. We all know what they are. We each have things that kind of just sort of nag on us. But instead of waiting to deal with them as they pop up, acknowledge it and say, hey, you know what? Sometimes I can be a little bit of a procrastinator. Here's what I'm going to do this year to make sure that I don't let that derail what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, let's move on here. All right, so now that we've kind of identified what we want to do, our priorities, we've taken a look at the obstacles. Now let's get into the execution. Like, what do we actually have to do to make all of this stuff happen? So you have goals, but those goals, in order to make them happen, you need to kind of identify the specific steps or initiatives or projects that you're going to do to actually help you achieve those goals. So on this slide here, I have an example that comes from my plan that talks about the vision statement and strategy statement that I created for Secrets of a Side Hustler. So the 3 priorities, those are kind of, you can think of those as like kind of like my 3 big goals that I had. And underneath where it has execution are different initiatives. And so these can be thought of almost as like goals, but also like projects or things that I'm going to do, or tactics or things that I'm going to do to make those priorities happen. So again, it all goes back to focusing on ensuring that we have a clear focus of what we want to accomplish, but ensuring that the work that we're doing all rolls back up to the priorities and rolls back to the vision. So an example here is that I really wanted to focus on building community through events online and in person. So some of the things that I have to do to make that happen is to host Side Hustle Chat weekly, make sure that I was hosting events in my city, put together a Side Hustle week. So here's where you'd actually, so this example is like very high level just for the purpose of the webinar without going into all the detail, but for yourself is to, oh, thank you, Robin. Thanks, Robin. For yourself, use this to really go deep into what you want to do. And I provided an example in your workbook. I can also give you guys, if you're interested, a blank template so you can create this for yourself. So once you have kind of what your vision statement is and you've narrowed out your 3 to 5 goals, I would probably ask you guys or even challenge you guys to like start plotting it out like this. So put out like what your priorities are, and then underneath those priorities, so if you have a goal to, this is going to be the year that you're creating a course, what are all the things that you need to do to make it happen? And put that underneath there. And those things are actually going to be part of your execution plan. And what do you do with it after that? You start planning out and plotting on the calendar of when it's going to happen. So I've used the example of quarterly. Axel, sorry, I'm just pausing. You know, those for 2016. This is, Axel, this is my 2015 plan, but some of these are carrying over into 2016. So yeah, that's a great question. So this was actually created, I created this from like a business perspective. So it was like almost like it's for the year, but I'm going to be refreshing it a little bit. I'll go back to that side. I'm going to be refreshing it slightly because there are a couple of things that I want to focus in a little bit more. So this is what I created for this year. Okay, awesome. Okay, so now that you've kind of identified what those things are, then you can start putting them into your calendar. So I've used for this purpose of this is like quarterly action plans. I like to kind of get a sense of like when things, it keeps me kind of focused on what are the important things that I want to do in the next 90 days. It's kind of like a way to be sort of really focused on, of making things happen. So once you kind of have your execution strategy, this is when you can start plotting out for your quarter. And if you work in 6-month intervals, you can also adjust it that way as well, into the actions that you need to take. So 30, 60, 90 days, like when are things going to happen? Oh, almost 9 o'clock. All right, step 7. Last piece is to stay connected. So once you've mapped out your big vision, your execution, you put out all of your when things are going to happen. So you have basically your plan put together. After that, it's important for you throughout the year to kind of stay connected to that plan. So how do you go about doing that? So you can create a VSEM. So that is what I showed you in the last slide, and I'll show another example. There's one piece that's missing, so I'll show that on the next slide. You can create a goal card. So Amber McHugh talks a little bit about this. There's a couple of other folks that have done this as well too. I've even done this myself, and really all it is just kind of taking a card and putting your goals. It could be just like a cue card, a index card, and you just write down what you want to accomplish in the year. So I actually have a few of those actually on my desk right now, of just like what I want to do for the year. So that's another thing that you can do. You can use your plan to identify your weekly to-do list. So for me, like I mentioned at the top of the call, is that like, if you're ever kind of thinking like, okay, what do I do this week? If you kind of mapped out or taking that time to map out like, you know, either do a VSEM or just to even figure out like what your major big priorities are, you should use that to help you strategize what your monthly or weekly to-do list would look like. Because essentially you've already identified what the big things you want to do. Then here you can kind of go to the next level and go into more detail of like what you should do to make it happen. Another thing that you can do is you can use IFTT. I think there's one extra T here by mistake, to send a text message or email of your goals to you. So I've done this actually this year just to kind of try it out for a month. And it was kind of fun actually as an experiment, and a fun way to kind of read my goals every day. So IFTT is like it's a website, and it's all based on these little automations that you can use to set up like little scripts. So you can set up a script that if you post a picture on Facebook, it automatically posts it on Twitter. You can set up something that if you are driving home and you pass a certain location, it will send you an email to somebody in your home or something like that. So it's like really very interesting. Like you can do so many different things. But what I used it for was just to kind of like test out a way that you can just kind of send messages to yourself. So you can send an SMS message, or you can actually email yourself. So you can create a recipe, which is what they call them, to send your plan to yourself every morning. So you send a text saying, Siobhan, read your goals this morning. So that's something that you can do, like if you just kind of want to stay abreast of if this, then that. Thank you, Jeff. That's what it is. It's a good way to kind of just stay focused and sort of remind yourself if you're sort of into automation. Last piece, create a vision board. So you can create a vision board for what you're accomplishing. I like to create them, but I also like to have a plan as well too. Like it's great to look at, it's great to have, but having a plan of what am I going to accomplish will really kind of take things to the next level. And I mentioned December 1st, save the date, vision board party, side hustle chat /blab coming soon. All right, so here's the example of the VSEM in complete detail. So the one piece that was missing that wasn't on the other slide were the metrics. So the first part is the vision of statement. So creating that vision statement for yourself. Then there's the 3 priorities. So you can think of those as your big goals, your big things that you're going to be focusing on for the year. your initiatives. What are the projects? What are the things that you need to do in order to make these things happen? And then the last thing, which is the M, are the metrics. These are your metrics of success. So how do you know you're successful, or what are the things that you're going to be tracking throughout the year? So for myself, for Side Hustle Chat, like, it's important for me to, like, you know, I had reach at first, but that really wasn't something as we got into it as important. For me, it was more of like, folks that are coming and engaging with each other, people who come to the live events, how many repeat individuals are coming back, folks that are engaged on the email list. Are they reading the emails? Are they just not opening them? Exceeding revenue targets for the events. So things like that you would use to sort of track how your success is, but also just to see like how you're doing, and just to get take a pulse. So this is a template that I'll send to you guys if you're interested, and then you can create one for your own brand as well. Okay, so the last piece is a couple of strategies that you can take from your full-time job to help level up your planning process. So I have 4 things that I've outlined that our full-time job actually shows us to do every day, that you can actually apply to your own business. So the first being the 90-day plan. So I think one of the things that I've noticed just being in the corporate world for a few years is that we sort of live, breathe quarterly reports. I'm now in Q4 at work, so it's crunch time, and we're actually in our planning process. So it's actually a great way to sort of sprint in the sense of getting things done. So it's all about not just like, oh, we have this year goal and we're just going to set these goals in January and then we'll check back in December. No, we're checking in every couple of 3 to 4 months. So that's a good way to kind of, from a business perspective, like, you really, especially if you have the aspiration to take your business either just to another level or even to full-time status, you kind of have to stay on top of like what your income is like, what are the things that you're doing, what is working for you, what's not working for you. And a 90-day plan is a great way to be able to do that. Another thing that's really interesting is performance reviews. So performance reviews are not usually the most favorite part of your full-time job, but I find that like I actually love them and using them within my side hustle. So how I've kind of adapted having a performance review for my business is that every 6 months is to kind of do a check-in, and it's more of like a deep dive check-in. So I have like monthly reviews and little things, but like, you know, checking in at the 6-month and annual mark of like, how did I do this year? Doing a quick check-in with my expenses, getting that stuff ready for tax time. Like, what did I enjoy doing? What don't I enjoy doing? What am I grateful for? What am I celebrating? What did I learn? So think about the questions that I shared at the top of the call in step number 1, and also that's in your workbook. You can also use some of those questions in a performance review as well. But I kind of look at it as like a pulse check of like, how am I doing? Like, are things good? Am I good? Am I feeling good? Am I feeling good about what I'm doing? Am I healthy? Am I enjoying it still? So that's how I use a performance review. Number 3, celebrating success. So again, like, I think sometimes we wait until all the goals are done in order to celebrate. And I think it's really important to every month or even every week to kind of celebrate your weekly wins, your monthly wins. Celebrate the journey that you're on. Like, being a side hustler is not easy, and the fact that you're doing it is something to be, you know, proud of if this is something that you're really passionate about. So we celebrate at work. You know, we have award ceremonies and things like that. Like, I don't do it to that level, but I really like to take the time to just kind of, you know, celebrate the things that I've accomplished. And I've actually had some of my own accountability partners who have really been pushing me to do this a lot more. So one of my good friends has actually challenged me as part of my accountability to her to kind of frame some recent like media coverage that I had, because I'm kind of just like, yeah, it's great, but I was just gonna put it in a corner and be like, no. And she's like, no, you're gonna frame it, and celebrate it and acknowledge it. So that's something that I have to do, and like take a picture and send it to her. And I'm actually grateful. At first I was like grumbling, but I'm grateful for it, because like, she's right. Like, you have to celebrate like what you've accomplished, because it's so easy to just be like, okay, on to the next thing. And you can't really do that. You really got to pause and really think about what you've done. And then the last piece, very important, especially from a business perspective, know your numbers. So what are your expenses? What is your income? Even things like, if you want to track this, you could look at your analytics and things like that. Don't spend all your time doing all of that all the time, but I would say that it's important, especially as you're growing your business, is to set that foundation early, especially if we're starting a new year. You can set up new systems if this is something you've struggled with in the past, or if it's something that you want to get better at. Think about like, what are your tracking systems like right now? Like, are they working for you? Are they not working for you? What are things that you can do to make that process easier for yourself? For me now, the last year, I started kind of being very proactive with like expenses, and like having them put and filed away and putting them in the spreadsheet right away, things like that, and tracking things like metrics. Everyone's different. There's always different policy, or not policies, but strategies of how you can do that. But I would say important, pick what works for you, but just kind of prioritize making that happen in your planning. So last piece of this is like, think of your job as a training ground, and think for yourself from a reflection perspective is like, what lessons or best practices could you leverage for your own business? Almost there, guys. Okay, so we're just kind of wrapping up. Is, in summary, we learned that hustling with intention is giving yourself permission to not do it all. It's choosing to have the joy of missing out instead of fear of missing out, because you're going to spend that time, that extra time that we talked about, identifying what you want to do. So that way that you're not focusing on trying to do everything. You're only going to be focusing on doing the specific things that are purposeful and meaningful to you. It's also about planning holistically. So most plans, we don't go into what are your values and your desires and your wellness. And that's what hustling with intention it requires of you, because it sees like planning is not just like this process outside of you. It requires you, all of you. And so you should kind of look at it from a perspective of like, if I want to make these things happen, like, how can I ensure that I'm my best self in making that happen as well too? And the last piece is that your hustling intention formula is your desires plus your vision. Make sure you take the time to remove those obstacles in step 5. Figure out your action steps and create that, if you want, that VSCM, and that will lead to a year of hustling with intention. And that is concluding the presentation. So I'm going to pause here for some questions and see if I can actually stop my sharing. I know we're at 9, so we just made it. Let's see if I can stop sharing here. If I'm back yet. Oh. Hello. I'm back. Hey guys. Okay, I'm just gonna read the chat and apologize again. And I'm looking over there. I got my whole like, thank you for introducing this. So you're welcome, Robin. I'm glad that hopefully it's helpful. Let's see. Oh, I know I'm the new kid. What's a self-care audit? Okay, so that's a great question, Axel. So a self-care audit, at least for me, is just like, I look at sort of the self-care practices that I'm doing for myself on a regular basis and seeing like what's working for me and what's not working for me. So a self-care practice, to define what that is that just like any kind of wellness practice that I do to sort of take care of myself. So it could be things like going to the gym, eating healthy, creating like a wellness plan for myself, even things like meditation, turning my phone on airplane mode before I go to sleep. Just like a bunch of different things that I use to sort of keep myself operating at my highest kind of frequency, so that I'm feeling inspired and happy and feeling healthy as well. So I like to do an audit of like the different things that I'm doing. So if there are points where I start feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I start looking at like, okay, is it the work that I'm taking on? Are some of the practices that I'm doing not really working right now? Do I need to adjust a couple of different things? Because I think one of the things with self-care sometimes is like, it can be very easy to like layer on too many things. So you kind of want to make sure that you don't fall in that danger of like, I'm going to do all like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go like the gym to like 6 days a week. I'm going to do this and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then your practices no longer become restorative. They actually become a burden and a job. So, and that's happened to me before too. So it's like, you have to kind of just take a pause and make sure that what you're doing is actually helping you and it's not harming you. So that's what I mean by an audit. It's just like, I like to just do a quick check-in, just like I check in with my work and see like, because it is part of like my everyday, like, are these things actually still like things that I enjoy doing and that I want to continue doing? So hopefully that answered your question. Thanks, Robin, for coming. Any other questions, guys? Thank you guys for hanging out with us. I'm nodding at the screen. Okay, thanks, Axel. All right, thank you, Elsie. Well, thank you guys for like coming. I know if there's no any more questions, you guys can feel free to like email me, reach out, and let me know like what you think. I will send you a copy of the blank VSCM template. Feel free if you have any questions of how to leverage that. But hopefully this was helpful to you guys. And thank you guys so much for joining this webinar. So the next one that we're going to do, it's actually going to be like the vision board party that I mentioned. And it's going to be like, I think we're going to do maybe like a Periscope half, well, part Periscope or Blab. I'm not sure yet. And then the rest of it will be our regular chat at 8 p.m. So still working out what that's going to look like. So stay tuned for some more details about that. It'll be on December 1st. And then after that, there's lots of other fun workshops planned. So thank you guys for tuning in. If there are no other questions, I will sign off. And I'm just going to see. Oh, thank you so much, Shakira. Thank you, Lisa. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Axel. Thank you, Jeff. Fantastic. All right. Feel free to dive into the workbook. Let me know any thoughts or feedback, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good night, guys. Bye.